Hello and welcome to the Pet Travel Insider Podcast, a podcast produced by Starwood Pet Travel to help pet owners who are considering transporting their pets gain an understanding of the process, learn the ins and outs of the import rules for destinations across the globe, and hopefully gather some tips and tricks along the way to make the process go smoother. On the Pet Travel Insider Podcast, we talk to experts including pet transporters, government officials, and vets, all in order to give you the insight you need to approach pet travel with confidence. I'm your host, Adam Melton. I'm VP of Strategic Initiatives here at Starwood. And on today's podcast, we are discussing pet travel to New Zealand, which is hands down one of the more difficult locations to transport a pet to, especially from the US. You have blood tests, import permits, quarantine, paperwork galore, and all of this must be started usually 4 months before you even think about putting a pet on a flight to New Zealand. So there's lots to talk about. So today we are sitting down to talk with one of Starwood's own, Sage Ingle. Sage is one of Starwood's pet travel coordinators. A pet travel coordinator is the person that is in charge of managing a client's move here at Starwood. Every client that signs up with us is assigned their very own pet travel coordinator, and they are the client's main point of contact during the booking stage and effectively the conductor of the whole move, getting the pet ready by managing vet requirements and documentation, coordinating drivers and flights, and just ensuring a seamless and safe end-to-end experience. And one of Sage's areas of expertise is New Zealand, so we're sitting down with her to discuss the overall rules, common mistakes, and some other good tips to make the process go smoother. So let's jump into today's conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Sage.
Hey, Adam, it's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for sitting down with us today to talk about New Zealand, pet travel to New Zealand. Before we jump into today's topic, though, share with the listeners a little bit about your background. How did you get into pet travel? Most everyone at our company didn't have a degree in pet shipping. So what's your background before Starwood? And you've been here about 6 years, right?
Yeah, it'll be 6 years in October.
Okay.
Before I got into this, I had no idea that it was really even a thing.
Most people don't, unless they all of a sudden they need to move overseas and they're like, oh, shoot, I got to bring my pet. How do I do it? And then they find us.
Yeah, and a friend of a friend was around when I was talking about wanting a new job. I was working at Starbucks before, and she just happened to mention that the company was hiring for a receptionist, and I jumped in on it, became a receptionist, and then from there I moved up to assistant pet travel coordinator, and then moved up into my current position as a pet travel coordinator.
Gotcha. And you've kind of done the full scope of the different destinations we service as a pet travel coordinator, right?
Right. Yeah. I've done pretty much all regions.
Okay. Gotcha. And now you're on to the Oceania, Australia, New Zealand region. Since you have background in pretty much all the destinations, how does New Zealand compare to some of the other destinations we service?
It definitely has a more strict timeline and set of rules. It could end up being 6 or more months until your pet can actually travel, or sometimes there's a minimum of 3-month time period before they can go.
Okay.
So some people don't realize that when they sign up and they're ready in a month.
Yeah. Okay. So you have some timing considerations there, which we'll jump into. So it's hard, but maybe not the hardest, right? So you can be thankful you're not going to like Australia, which is definitely the hardest, right?
It's a little more difficult.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, let's jump into talking about New Zealand pet travel there. Can you imagine I'm a first timer, as most of our clients are? I've never transported a pet, much less to somewhere like New Zealand. So just imagine I'm a client moving with my pet to New Zealand. What is the high level overview, the major milestones or steps to get your pet ready for travel and to get your pet to New Zealand?
So from start to finish, basically the pet has to be microchipped. That is the first and foremost. They have to have a microchip implanted. It does have to be ISO compliant, or it can be an AVID microchip. From there, the pet has to have a valid rabies vaccine given after the microchip is implanted. We can kind of delve into the details of that after. But from the microchip and then the rabies vaccine, a pet can see a USDA-accredited vet for the rabies titer blood test. After that is taken care of, we'll kind of go through some more steps. Once we get the blood test results back, we do what's called an official veterinary declaration. Those generally take about 2 to 3 weeks for the USDA to endorse.
Okay.
In that timeline or time frame, we will request the quarantine space, dependent on the date that we're aiming for. And then as soon as we have the official veterinary declaration back and we have quarantine booked, we'll request the import permit. And those have currently been taking about 5 to 6 weeks to receive.
Okay.
And then once we have the import permit in hand, that's when we can actually book a flight and set everything else up for the pets to head off.
Gotcha. So we have microchip, blood test, OVD or official veterinarian declaration, then quarantine, then import permit, and then you can fly. That's kind of the broad
There's
strokes,
also
right?
a few vet appointments that'll lead up to the departure date.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. All right. So that's the high level. Lots of steps there. How long does you kind of hinted at this before, but how long does that full process take? Like, what do you usually coach clients to expect as far as total timeline?
So as long as a pet is already microchipped and they've had a primary rabies vaccine, so it could go a couple of different ways. If a pet just got microchipped and this is a brand new rabies vaccine after microchipping, there is a mandatory 6-month waiting period before a pet can travel. If they've already had this and say their vaccine lapsed, and this is a new rabies vaccine, they also have to follow that 6-month time period.
Okay, gotcha.
Otherwise, if they've already had the vaccine for over 6 months, then from there they do the rabies titer blood test. That is a mandatory 3-month waiting period from the date of the blood draw.
Okay.
But generally, with the timeline of everything import processing wise, it'll take about 4 months.
4 months. Oh, gotcha. So it's something you have to plan ahead.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
most people, it's a huge logistical nightmare to get their entire lives moved from the U.S. to New Zealand anyway, and so they are typically starting well in advance. But if you're not, and you're thinking ahead to traveling to New Zealand, make sure you start this process at least 4 months in advance. Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so we have that high level overview, and is that for dogs and cats together? Are there any differences between dogs and cats, how they're treated in this import process?
Those first few steps, the microchipping, rabies vaccine, and rabies titer blood test is the same for cats and dogs.
Okay.
Kind of along the way in the process, dogs do have a few extra things that they have to go through import wise. To start off, all of the general vaccines. For cats, there is only the FBRCP aside from rabies. But for dogs, we have the distemper or DHPP combination. We have Bordetella, leptospirosis, and canine influenza on top of having the rabies vaccine.
Gotcha. Okay, so some additional general vaccines. No special blood testing though for dogs versus cats or anything. It's just that the rabies titer blood test.
The special blood testing does come in later on before travel.
Okay.
So basically, when you're in that last month before the departure date, if your pet is already up to date on all general vaccines and we're just focusing mainly on the import requirements, about 2 to 3 weeks before departure, there will be an appointment for internal and external parasite treatments. That is for both cats and dogs.
Okay.
And then for dogs specifically, within 16 days of departure, they have to go in for specific blood testing. They have to do the Babesia gibsoni, Brucella canis, and heartworm blood test.
Okay. All right. So brush up on your Latin before you head into the vet's office. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And we have clients do that about 14 days out. That way we have a little bit of extra playroom in case there's any kind of delay or anything. But we do also offer assistance with using our Prototech account to do the blood work, just in case clients' vets don't know what they're needing to do or they don't work with a lab that the testing has to be done with, because it does have to be done with an approved lab.
Okay. And Prototech is one of those approved labs. So
Prototech is one of those.
So they get, if someone's working with Starwood, they get the benefit of being able to use our account with that lab and make sure those blood tests are done correctly.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. So that's done. And those blood tests, again, are for dogs only.
For dogs only.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. You did mention at the beginning, as you were giving the high-level overview of the import rules, you mentioned USDA-accredited vet. Do all of these appointments that you've kind of run through, those all have to be done with USDA-accredited vet, right?
From the rabies titer blood test up until the end, they do. If your pet was already microchipped and had a rabies vaccine or general vaccines by a non-USDA accredited vet, that's perfectly fine.
Gotcha.
But if you're starting over, we always recommend going to a USDA vet from start to finish.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's something I don't think everyone knows that there are a lot of USDA accredited vets, but not all vets are USDA accredited. And so that's like an important thing to check kind of early on. Is your home vet, are they USDA accredited? Because if not, you need to find one before you start this process.
Yeah, and there is the USDA has a website where you can find USDA-accredited vets in your area. So that can be a helpful tool.
Gotcha. Okay. So you mentioned it's a 3 month waiting period after the blood draw, but it doesn't seem like that's just kind of like passive sitting around waiting. There's a lot to do, and it sounds like, especially really close to export within the last 2-3 weeks, there's kind of a sprint of different things that need to be done: treatments, blood draws. In the case of a dog, it's a pretty busy 3 months, right?
Yeah, definitely. So after the rabies titer blood draw is done, the results usually come back in about 2 to 3 weeks.
Hmm.
Once we have the results back, that's when we can do the official veterinary declaration.
Okay.
And then, like I said, we'll apply for the quarantine dates during that time period. And then once we have it back, we immediately apply for the import permit. And then while we're waiting for the import permit, we're still trying to figure out the logistics of pets' kennels and then kind of just determining all the final logistics for those vet appointments that are needed before travel, and then logistics of the last couple of days before the pets fly out.
Gotcha. Okay. So with all these benchmarks you're talking about and things that need to be done, how do you, as a pet travel coordinator, how do you manage it? How do you help clients make it a little bit easier for clients to kind of get a picture, or to kind of make sure they're staying on the timeline?
So we do have the pet travel portal. This will have a vet schedule that outlines exactly what's needed at all of their vet appointments plus suggested dates. So this is a big tool for them to use to make sure they stay on top of things towards the end.
Hmm.
They also have tasks in the portal to keep them on track with getting a kennel or getting us sizing so that way we can provide a kennel for them. Otherwise, it's really just keeping reminders on myself to make sure we stay on track and get everything that we need in line.
Gotcha. So they have some access to tools to keep them on track. It's not like they're just adrift there and they have to keep their own
Exactly.
calendar. We have resources and tools for them. Okay. So let's unpack a little bit more about the what needs to be done just prior to departure with like the health certificate and that. What does that process look like? T-5 days or whatever it is just before departure.
For New Zealand specifically, we have to do the health exam within 2 days of departure. At this appointment, we do a round of internal and external parasite treatments, and then we do the international health certificate. This is done with a partnered USDA accredited vet.
Okay. One
So
of
depending on,
Starwood's
yeah,
partners. Okay.
one of Starwood's partnered USDA vets. We have a lot throughout the region, so just depending on where you're going from, we'll figure out the logistics of coordinating this for you. They do a pretty extensive health exam, just make sure the pets are fit to fly, and then the documents are uploaded to the USDA for endorsement. And we pick that back up on the day of departure. Generally, the pets have to be checked in about 4 to 5 hours before their flight takes off.
Okay.
And just before that's done, take the pets to the USDA office to pick up their endorsed paperwork and do the USDA crate sealing before the pets get checked in.
Okay, gotcha. That's kind of the crate seal is a unique thing to New Zealand. I don't think any other countries, at least from the US, require that, right?
Nope, just New Zealand.
Okay. And what does that mean, a crate seal? Because I think people hear seal like they
Yes.
probably think of something more than it actually is. So what does that process actually look like with the USDA?
So when we're there, the vet just kind of checks them over one more time, but they use a metal clamp to close the door, they wrap it with the kennel and the door frame so that way it all stays intact.
Okay, gotcha.
Technically, the seal is not meant to be broken until pets arrive in quarantine.
Okay, gotcha. So it's like a chain of custody thing to make sure the pet stays in during the transit period.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. And there's like little numbers or a code or something on that little metal seal.
Yeah, so there's a code on there that the vet puts on the health certificate. That way it's recorded in advance. In special circumstances, if there is a layover, we do have a vet on site break it and reseal for
Okay,
connecting flight.
gotcha. Okay, so that way they can, on that layover, they can get out of the travel kennel, do their business, eat, drink, relax a little bit. Okay, so even though that crate seal is required, are some exceptions to break it during airline layovers.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. So you get that crate seal, they get to the airport, they fly to New Zealand, to Auckland typically, and then quarantine, right? Can you tell the listeners a little bit about what quarantine is like, what their pet, is going to experience during their quarantine stay, and how long the quarantine is?
Yeah, so once the pets get there, they have a mandatory 10-day quarantine stay. We have two facility options in the Auckland area, Pet Haven and Qualified Pet Services. They're both really great. Their staff we have worked with for many years now. Both facilities provide great updates and photos.
Hmm.
While the pets are there, they are able to stay together, of course, same species. So family dogs can stay together or family cats can stay together.
Okay.
They do provide Royal Canin as a food in-house, but owners are able to send in a locally sourced food if they prefer.
Okay.
You can also send toys, dog beds, blankets, catnip, anything you like.
Oh, nice. Okay. As long as you organize getting it to that quarantine facility.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, sounds like it's pretty nice stay, pretty nice experience that they have. And you said they're getting updates along the way, so it's not like they're in the dark about how their pet is doing.
Exactly. Yeah. It can't always be a daily update just because they are busy,
Hmm.
but the facility does try to reach out at least every couple of days, keep you up to date, and then they organize with the client directly for the day of release, how that'll work.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, and is it? There, you said there's two facilities, and they're privately run facilities, unlike neighboring Australia that where it's the Australian government that runs the facility. These are private facilities, and you said we have two that we can choose from and work with. But to kind of can you talk a little bit about the process to get booked into those quarantine facilities? Are there any blackout times, or do you usually get your first pick of date, or how does the scheduling of quarantine work?
So once we are booking quarantine, generally we are kind of booking out a couple months in advance. So a lot of the times the dates are available, but actually right now we're currently running into, they're kind of booked 2 months out at the moment. So it looks like this time of the year is a little bit busier for them. So our date isn't always open. So they give us kind of what dates will work for them. As far as blackout dates, they do actually close for the holiday season for Christmas. Specifically, MPI closes as of last year. It was the beginning of November. They stopped accepting any applications for import permits and they weren't processing them until late January into February.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you're traveling near the end of the year, the name of the game is flexibility as far as like dates and whatnot, because there's going to be
Yeah,
some delays. Okay. And
definitely.
MPI, that's the New Zealand government office that does the import animal control kind of thing.
Yeah, it's basically like our USDA here.
Okay. Gotcha.
So they're the ones that review all the pets paperwork, process the import permits for us, and they do vet check upon arrival and upon release from quarantine.
Okay. So they're checking when the pet arrives at the quarantine facility, but then also at the end of that 10 days, there's another check. Okay. Gotcha. And what exactly are they checking for during those?
Just making sure their paperwork meets compliance upon arrival, and checking for fleas and ticks since we do a couple of treatments in advance before travel, making sure they're healthy, meeting just normal standard regulation. And then upon release, they pretty much do the same thing, make sure nothing was acquired during the time in quarantine, that they're good to go home.
Gotcha. Okay. So people can rest assured that their pet in quarantine is a great experience, great facilities and people, the staff that work there. But then there's also those government, the MPI vets that are always in there, so a vet and help are not far if something does happen and they need vet care, right?
Yeah, and also if a client has a preferred vet outside of the facility,
Hmm.
they are allowed to call a vet in during business hours to check on their pet if needed,
Okay.
depending on the situation.
Gotcha. Now, can clients go and physically visit their pet while they're in quarantine, or what does that look like?
Unfortunately, they can't visit while they're in quarantine. It's kind of changed years back. They previously were able to, but they noticed that more so for the pet's stability, it's easier for them to not see their owners and then
Yeah.
have them leave
Yeah. Okay.
and not understand why they can't leave with them.
Right, right. Gotcha. Okay. So just do the 10 days and then you're reunited. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Anything else about quarantine? Any kind of common questions you get from clients or concerns that you get from clients about the quarantine experience?
Really, people just ask if they're going to get updates or they mention if they've seen kind of issues years back from the facility directly. But I let them know that both facilities are really great. We've worked with them for years. All their staff are trained handlers, so they know what to do for cats and dogs and in all situations. They keep
Hmm.
us very up to date if anything's happening or just in general. So,
Yeah. Gotcha. And I have to say I've been in Auckland at one of the quarantine facilities for a reunion after the 10 days, and that the kids were there, the mom and dad were there, and the pet came out, and the pet was just full of life. but obviously super excited to see the owners, and that was a really special moment. So I'm sure you hear that time and time again, that reunion moment is such a powerful time, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when the kids are involved and they've been waiting to see their family pets for
Right.
almost 2 weeks at this point,
Right.
and they
Right.
finally get to see him again. It's amazing.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the travel logistics themselves. What routes, what options, what airlines do we have? How are we typically getting pets to New Zealand?
So, most common is doing the Air New Zealand direct from LA or San Francisco.
Okay.
Obviously, if you live across the country, it's a little hard to get over there.
Hmm.
We do have domestic flight options for pets if they meet size requirements and the temperature requirements at that time of year.
Hmm.
So we can do domestic flights to reach there and do Air New Zealand, or we also offer Qatar. And we can take Qatar from pretty much, we have like Texas, Atlanta. We can do some out of Florida, and then a lot more eastern states over here.
Okay.
So it widens the options quite a bit.
Now, with Qatar, though, you're not talking about direct flight. Air New Zealand, the benefit there is that you have a direct flight from San Francisco or LA to Auckland. But if you're not in California, basically, you have kind of a journey to get there. And you hinted at the domestic travel. People don't realize, I think it's kind of ironic that despite having three major airlines, tons of airline hubs within the United States, it's actually a lot of times harder to transport a pet domestically in the US than it is overseas, isn't it?
It actually is. Yeah, there's so many more like temperature requirements or breed requirements. You have to go off the timing of the day, timing of
Hmm.
the year. There's so many different factors. And then size is a very big thing. So pretty much if your pet is anything over like a normal medium,
Hmm.
it's very difficult.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. And people don't usually understand that. So you're all set if you're in California, it's easy, or you're close to driving distance to California. But for the most part, it ends up, we have using Qatar out of one of their cities. That's not a direct flight, but kind of explain what that experience is like. Because it does sometimes when people think, oh, well, obviously go west, use Air New Zealand. That's better than having to fly east through the desert. It kind of explain what that experience is like for pets using when we use Qatar Airways.
So when we use Qatar, they do go through Doha, and there's a wonderful, pristine animal lounge that
Hmm.
we have a layover there.
Hmm.
With going to New Zealand, since we do have that crate sealing process before
Hmm.
departure, pets have to be there at least about 10 to 12 hours or more. This is just so that way we can break that metal seal. Pets can be let out, have their own space for a while, eat, drink, and then we have an accredited vet on site, which is there 24/7. They handle resealing the kennel before the connecting flight.
Gotcha. Okay. So they get out, they're able to get out, get food, water, do their business. But it does have to be, we have to plan for about a 10 or 12-hour layover in Doha. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, gotcha. So you do net like a longer travel period going that way, going east using Qatar. But I guess there's some, I mean, obviously there's a logistical benefit of not having to try to navigate the domestic travel network over to California or, save a drive of, 25-hour drive, whatever it is, you're driving from the East Coast. But you also have the advantage of kind of being able to do all the final vet stuff in your backyard, right? Like closer to home. If you live in Georgia, for instance, and you're able to use Qatar out of Atlanta, most of the final vet work can be done there, right? It's not like you have to do it elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So we would just work with the partnered agent that goes out of that hub. They'd help us with that vet appointment 2 days before departure. And then your pet can stay with you for those final couple days, or we do have options of boarding if needed. And then you're not really having to drive hours or
Right.
fly cross country to make it even
Right.
start.
Right. Gotcha. And I do believe Qatar also gives a travel update in Doha. So even though there's that layover, they send a little pet report card or pet card
A
or something,
postcard,
right?
yeah.
A postcard, yeah,
Yeah, so
with a
they send a
photo of the pet.
postcard with a photo.
Yeah.
Generally, they do that for about 12 or more hours, but
Okay.
since we usually stay about 11, they'll send it for those
Okay.
moves.
Gotcha. Okay. So they get a little glimpse of their pet while they're traveling the world and they're transiting through Doha. That's great. Okay. So that's the logistics. Are there any kind of common pitfalls or mistakes that, clients that are going through the process that you've heard of, that you've seen the clients making?
Really, the one thing that can mess up your timing the most is letting a rabies vaccine lapse or thinking that it was current or your pet had a microchip and they actually didn't, and having to basically start from square one, and you have that 6-month waiting period. Otherwise, sometimes there are issues with timing of final vet appointments, but as long as we're there for guidance, we pretty much keep people on top of it. So,
Gotcha. Are there any common misconceptions that people have about pet travel in general that when someone signs up and they're fresh, they've never done this before? What are some maybe common misconceptions or fears that clients have about the process in general, or maybe specifically to New Zealand?
the process in general, people are always worried about their pets being on a plane unsupervised, especially when it comes into having to be checked in for the flight. Generally, it's 4 to 6 hours ahead of the flight time. So their pets are sitting in the kennels waiting for the flight and then get on. During that time, people think they're just sitting there on the tarmac waiting, but they're actually in an office at the cargo station waiting to board the flight. Pets are first on, or last on, first off. So that way we minimize time on the tarmac as much as possible. And then for the most part, pets seem unfazed by the whole process and flying and then being in quarantine for days, while clients are worried that their dog's going to come out just seeming miserable, or the cats are going to seem like they've been neglected forever. But for the most part, they settle in super quickly once they get home.
Gotcha. Okay. Probably have some jet lag, maybe.
A little bit.
Yeah. How does it work? So if someone lives in the South Island, like Christchurch, for instance, how does that work with flights, quarantine, all that? What does that typically look like?
So basically, if you have to fly somewhere else after quarantine, we do work with Jet Pets in New Zealand to coordinate a flight from Auckland to wherever you need to go afterwards. At certain airports, we can offer delivery from the airport to home, but in some places, they don't have the means to do it. So clients will just pick up from that airport. And then we can also offer just delivery from Auckland quarantine to the surrounding local area.
Gotcha. Okay. But so for the most part, if you live down the South Island, we encourage, or I mean, are we required to do the Auckland quarantine? Because there is a quarantine facility on the South Island, but I think it's just a matter of not having as many flight options into Christchurch directly, right?
So with going to Christchurch, it's just making the flight a lot longer than it needs to be. So we do have a quarantine facility option in Christchurch, and we can use it as long as you are okay with your pet being in the kennel possibly 25 to 30 hours nonstop.
Okay.
They have to come from the States and then route into Auckland, and then usually have at least a couple of hours before the next flight takes off, which they have to stay in their kennels and then fly from Exactly.
Okay.
And then fly from Auckland to Christchurch.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's probably, I mean, since you can't visit the pet in quarantine anyway, it probably is just smoother to do the quarantine in Auckland and then catch a domestic flight 10 days later.
So Christchurch has actually allowed visitation. I don't know if they do it in all circumstances or if it's a little bit more special.
Okay.
There's kind of been different rules throughout the years, so it can change a little bit.
Okay.
But they have offered it, but realistically, if you're putting a dog in the kennel for that long, you don't know how much water they're intaking or how they're really doing during that time.
Okay.
We always try to recommend not doing it.
So, because the main downside, as you said, is that the pet is in a kennel 20 to 25 hours because they're flying into Auckland because there's no Christchurch. So they're flying into Auckland. They have to have a layover, catch an Air New Zealand domestic flight down to Christchurch. But during that layover, they cannot get out.
Right.
So that's the main downside we're trying to kind of protect against, and just say, hey, cut it a little bit shorter, get them out of the crate earlier, quarantine in Auckland, and then jump down South Island after.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much, Sage, for joining us today. As the listeners heard, it's pretty complicated to get a pet to New Zealand, but thankfully we have experts like you on staff who work with our customers to get them and their pets ready. So I really appreciate the time that you spend with our clients, and just appreciate the time that you spent talking with us today. Thank you so much, Sage.
Thanks, Adam.
And I want to thank the viewers for joining us today. If you have any more questions or need help with your pet's upcoming move to New Zealand, please feel free to visit our website, where we have tons of free resources and guides, and where you can also easily request a quote for our services. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you can stay up on all the podcasts we have coming up. Until next time, I'm Adam Melton for the Pet Travel Insider Podcast. Thanks for listening, and safe travels to you and your furry friends.